someone speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody here. I am back from vacation. I was up in New England at my timeshare on the Cape of Cod. Very nice. A lot of cool stuff happened. Ran into a bunch of things around this topic of opposition. Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, we're gonna have a blast, I think. Although my notes are a little scattered because I did literally just get back today. So it's a 2-day drive from down here from New England. A little discombobulated, but I'll get there. I'll get there. So yeah, I went for my timeshare, a week on the Cape of Cod, which is one of my favorite places, and it was lovely. I went to we had lovely weather all day except one day when it rained. But even that day wasn't bad weather, just rain. So that was fun. Went for a lot of walks, ate a lot of food, and enjoyed a lot of things. Went to one of the most popular beaches in the world, or famous beaches in the world, which is Coast Guard Beach. Except we couldn't go to Coast Guard Beach, so we went to Nauset Light Beach, which is 1 mile up the same stretch of sand. So it's pretty much the same beach. I don't know what's going on in the Cape of Cod, but they're playing the California game. You can't use our beach. Illegal in the United States, but whatever. A lovely beach. I had no idea how nice it was because I had never been to those particular beaches. Usually they're crowded and whatever. It's early in the season for the Cape, so there weren't a lot of people there. So that was fun. But I'm glad to be back. I'm sorry I had to miss so many days. I hope you liked my video releases. It's made a couple of important video releases while I was gone. I have another one I got to prep too, and then I got to start recording again. But I think I've had several breakthroughs, so that gives us lots of stuff to potentially record. I think I figured out how to make a couple of videos that I've been struggling with. So hopefully those will come out soon. I just got to buckle down on the recording. So let's do an inventory. I got my San Pellegrino. I have my Justin's peanut butter, basically Reese's knockoff with dark chocolate, and I got some Rice Krispie treats. We went to the store, and I just gave in to the marketing. They had like 80 of those stupid little things in a box. I just threw it in the cart. Yeah, it was good. And of course, I couldn't eat 80 even with help in that amount of time. So we've got some Carolina Lapsang tea. It smells delicious from the Table Rock Tea Company. Which absolutely delicious stuff. So yeah, notes are a little scattered today, but I will get through them. And hopefully people have questions or want to join in later when I'm done spewing whatever I spew. But this theme of opposition has sort of come up a lot lately, and that's why I wanted to address it, because when I talk about rebels and rebellion, that's also a speech about opposition, right? It's about resisting people or resisting situations, usually for no reason, right? I mean, this is one of the great problems we have, is that we as humans tend to create problems that we don't need to create. They don't need to be there. And that's all the problems of the world wouldn't exist if humans weren't here, because we create them all. They don't exist without us. And I think opposition in particular is a good example of this. And I know my good friend Manuel Post, his channel Agapic Orientation, he did a talk with Gage Murphy, and they talked about this subject, and I did listen to it, and it was interesting. I mean, a lot of that informs what I'm going to talk about, or inform the thinking that I went over with this. So maybe it's worth watching, maybe not. It's a pretty long video, actually, and it's full of bad framing, poorly articulated thoughts, and struggle, right? Real struggle. So if you want to watch that, I'll post a link here for you. Oh, Tom, it's good to see you. The feminine video, yeah, the feminism video was awesome. Also, I have another video coming out about wisdom. That's going to be fun. So there's a wisdom video coming out with Jess. Actually, we are going to have a blast with that one. That was quite a fun video to do. I did that on vacation for you, my audience. So that'll also be coming out. It'll be coming out in various channels too, hopefully. Jess's channel. Yeah. And probably one of the Randas Uniteds, maybe both. We'll see. But look, let's jump into opposition, because I hate to do this. I really do. Like, this is just the worst. Opposition, right, is related to oppose. And to oppose means you, the person, right, has chosen a type of framing explicitly by using that word, right? It's in the definition of the word. It means to set apart. Okay, the problem with setting things apart is that that's a psyop. That's the psyop. You are the person setting things apart. The opposition isn't there without you. Right? You've created the problem. The problem comes from you and you alone. Right? This is sort of commensurate with, we'll say, Catholic teaching, right? Turn the other cheek. Although I can argue against that. It's strange to me that people are so wrapped up with holding a viewpoint where there is a conflict in it for no reason, without respect for anything. And to Tom's sort of excellent point here, right? I watched the Manuel and Gage talk. It was fascinating how Gage ended up agreeing with Manuel, except he ultimately had to not agree. He ultimately had to oppose. He did that to himself. So even the logic, reason, rationality would have led him to the path of understanding why opposition is not the thing. The opposition continued because it kind of self-generates, because it's wrapped up in your ego. You set things against. You do that as the observer. It's called the observer problem in physics. No, really, it is. It's not inherent in the things in the world. It's not inherent in material. It's not inherent in anything, really. You are the framer. You control the framing. Humans frame. It's that simple. Things, material, emergence cannot do that. And then the question becomes, why set things against? Why oppose? Why are you setting things against other things? Why are you setting them apart? Instead of maybe maintaining the quality of relationships that the thing has as a result of being in the same world as you. It's because you want to be special. You want to be able to do that. You want to have that power, if you will, that ability, that authority. You want to lead the way. And if you weren't born special in a way that you like, right, you make yourself special. This is the postmodern ego play. The postmoderns use your ego against you. Whether you realize it or not, you don't have to read Foucault. Don't read Foucault. Foucault's evil. Hint, make final cause great again. Oh, the outcome was bad? Maybe you don't listen to the philosopher with the bad outcome. Either or anybody? It's not that hard, I assure you. When you get stuck in this trap of not understanding that opposition is you and you alone, it's your fault. It's a thing that you've done. I'm not saying it's useless. I'm not saying you should never do it. Mathieu Peugeot uses this in his book. He uses this for contrast. I'm a big fan of contrast. You need contrast to see, right? Very important. When you run into a problem, often that problem is your framing, and it's not a problem inherent outside of you in the world itself. Opposition, all opposition, is reciprocally narrowing, right? John Vervaeke talks about this. It's addiction. It's the same thing. That's not all reciprocal narrowing is, but opposition is a type of reciprocal narrowing, right? Where you are setting things apart in the world, and that will narrow them automatically because you've severed the relationships. That's what setting apart does. There's no way around that. You can't try to redeem opposition by coming up with a new, more complicated framework. No, don't do that. Keep the world simple because it is. You won't be satisfied with the simple world. I get that. Not in the age of gnosis, but the world is very simple. And it's our desire to be bigger than we are and want to make the world more complex so that we can solve a problem, which we created or we bought into, right? Rather than just accepting the simple world, the simple life that we have. See my live stream on mediocrity. And what you'll notice if you pay attention carefully, and maybe you can't, fair enough, that's why I'm here. People are deeply confused about opposition. They keep describing independence, right? Because to set something apart from something else makes it independent. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But that denies connection. It also denies empathy. Everybody goes, I'm in opposition, but I want to be empathic, right? Well, why do you think people are asking for empathy? Because of the opposition. They're like, oh, the solution to opposition is empathy. What? Kind of, but no. But you destroyed the empathy already, and now you want to add it back in. I know, don't create the problem, and then you don't have to solve the problem because the problem doesn't happen. But better plan. And it's inherent, right? To set things apart inherently breaks a connection, a relationship. And that destroys the quality of that relationship. And again, maybe you have to do that to see better. I get that. You don't have to stay there. You can like leave your opposition once you realize all of your arguments are wrong and the other person that you're agreeing with has better arguments. That's one way to leave opposition, because the opposition is something you created to begin with, right? And you can state anything in opposition. People don't realize it. It's really kind of a banal sort of every 3-year-old does this kind of trick, right? You can just say men and women are opposites. They're not opposites, like opposite about men and women. They're complementary. They're cooperative, right? The minimum unit size for person is probably man plus woman. How's that for anti-opposition? And it can grow to man plus woman plus children, right? But it's weird, right? Like, you know, a spouse dies, the other spouse is probably not far behind on average. A little strange, a little strange. We're not complete until we contend with someone from the opposite sex. We're just not. Sorry. Maybe we become even larger when we have children, but we're not even complete before we're married to some extent. Just is what it is. And if you start out in opposition, especially when you're single, how are you going to get together? If men and women are opposed, like, why would you get married? That's a mistake. You don't want to marry your opposition. That's insane. Don't do that. Actually. Also, don't set people in opposition or classes like men and women in opposition. And then again, the problem, you have to solve the problem because it never happened. But again, if you listen, people are talking about independence. Independence is important. You need to discover the nature of things by setting them apart first. And actually, this is the scientific project. Science adds accuracy and precision to this equation, for sure, and that's important. For science, you can see that science is a very limited, much smaller way of using opposition to create contrast to see something better. That's all science is. Science is also only validation. Sorry, science. And the problem is, to some extent, equality happens. And inequality, you can't tell where you end and other things begin. And so as the world is getting democratized or more equal, both are the same thing, as equality doctrines become enacted left, right, and center, you want to oppose because you want to set yourself apart. You want to be independent of this nebulous equality thing that means you don't exist, because technically in an equal world, you don't exist. You can't exist in equality. You can't. That doesn't mean that abstractions can't be equal. You can be equal under the law. The law is an abstraction. That's easy to do, right? It doesn't mean you equal to me. That's hell. Don't do that. And in equality, you don't need to discern boundaries, and therefore there's no conflict, and therefore intimacy is free. We all have it by default, without any work, without any argument, without having to struggle and work things out. We can just have intimacy. Conflict-free, work and effort-free intimacy, because we're all equal. So we're all fully connected. Completely. We're overlapping. In fact, I can't tell where I end and you begin. Wow. Sounds great. But then people want to oppose because they want to be independent. They want to stand out. They want to see themselves. Sure. Absolutely. This is tied to that so-called pro-felicity, which is a garbage frame, by the way. It's tied to pro-felicity. It's tied to identity. It's tied to all that. In an equal world where everyone's equal, you can't have an identity because, again, the boundaries are gone. That's why equality is evil. Don't do that. But what that means is that equality doctrine is both caused by and reciprocally causes the intimacy crisis. That's what it does. And that's why you see all this opposition. Opposition is a rejection of equality without rejecting equality directly. And that's the problem. You gain the ability not to do the work of discernment, judgment, and action free live streams. You can check those out. Or you can have intimacy. It's up to you. But you lose a lot when you flatten the world and make it equal, because you're flattening the world to make it equal. In order for you and I to be equal, we have to discern one another. We have to discern boundaries. And anywhere you have boundaries, you're going to have conflict. That's inevitable. But conflict's not bad. Conflict teaches us about the world in an important way, especially experientially or participatorily. Participatory knowledge, anybody? For the John Vervaeke fans out there, it's right there. Now, independence and setting things against or apart are not the same thing, right? And this might be where people are confused and they're misusing this term, opposition or oppose. It might be why they don't recognize that they're rebels. The things that oppose you are not necessarily what we would call opposites, certainly not in the binary fashion. They are also not your opponent. Those are different things. We have lost our ability to discern things like this. Difference between independence, opposition, opposites, those aren't the same thing. They're operating in different ways to different effects. In fact, the only reason why opposites become a problem is we're in the binary thinking mode, where everything is in column A or column B. And now all opposition is binary opposition and results in the matter-antimatter problem. There's as much matter in the universe as there's antimatter. The universe can't exist mathematically. Yes, physicists have run into this problem many times. We don't know why they can't solve such a simple thing, but they don't seem to want to work in the right direction. So can't kind of help them. That's the problem. You have to understand that independence does not mean opposition, and that opposition is not bad, and that conflict is inevitable, whether without opposition, and that in a non-binary world, there's more than two categories. There's more than, say, Democrat and Republican. There's a binary. Man and woman, that's a binary. We don't live in that world. That's in our world, but we don't live in that world because that's too flat, too small, too compressed. In the world of binaries, you just don't have enough contrast to see things clearly enough. You lose too much discernment. Then you try to get it back by opposing. And now you're just rebelling against everything because you have to. But you have to because you put yourself there. You don't have to because the world's making you. And that's the thing. You can set yourself apart. Cost, intimacy, connectedness, relationship as such. It's up to you. Because again, you set the things. The things aren't set out in the world independent of you. That never happens. And again, a problem is created. Well, several problems are created. You have to raise up the lowest to make the world equal. So you try to redeem, right? You try to purify. But when you try to redeem opposites, you're a rebel, right? Because you're denying the natural order of the world. Some things are lower and some things are higher. Sorry, they just are. I didn't do that. I was already here when I got here. I don't want to tell you. I was here when you got here too. Here's what it is. It's good. Then we can see. We can have discernment. We can work towards intimacy. It's hard work, for sure. And now the rebels want to justify their rebellion, their oppositions, their setting against framing. and their perfection of the world. And they want to restore the intimacy that they have rejected and force the easy equality doctrine solution on everyone to avoid changing themselves. When you set things apart, you are in control of the frame. You're in charge. Why should you change? You can be a rebel forever. That is true. That is true. I don't know why you want to, but hey, true story, bro. The other problem is when you squish this world down to this flat thing, you do lose this discernment. It does get you in this reciprocal cycle. It does trap you trying to find pro-felicity, which is related to identity. It does trap you in this mode where it's eat or be eaten. That's a binary mode. It's all opposition. Because you want to break free, but you also want equality so you can get your intimacy. I mean, it's just laziness at the end of the day. You're stuck. I get it. You're stuck. A lot of people are stuck. You're stuck in your binary frame. There's no reason for that. You did that to yourself. No one did that to you. You did that to yourself. And it feels good to be in control and to set things apart because it's basically playing God. It just occurs to me maybe somebody should have written that down in a book a couple thousand years ago and told us all that, and maybe we would make that mistake. But something tells me no one would read the book, or I guess even if they did read it, they wouldn't understand it, or if they did understand it, they wouldn't act on it. That could be a problem. But once this flattening is created, because you're trying to understand the world, you're trying to live in the world, you've been told you can know it. You can't know the world. You can't even know a small part of the world. You're a Muppet. You're a Muppet. You can't do anything you want to do. You're a Muppet. I can't be a basketball player. I can't dunk a basketball. I'll never be able to dunk a basketball. Not gonna happen. I'm not tall enough. I can almost make up for it with jumping. But nah, almost. And now this moves us into this idea of neutrality, which I've talked about before, I think, but to some extent it saves you from opposition, right? And the neutral position adds more points of contrast. So you're better sight, clearer sight. Right? You have to track three things. Oh no. But also, you have better sight. It's a good trade-off. It's a cost you can pay, and go for it. And the issue is that the neutrality has to exist, and no one cares if you believe in it. It has to exist. It's not just some random category, but it has to be a way of being in the world because you need the contrast to see. Right? You also need something to do and a place to do it in. So if everything you do is either good or bad, right? Or as you're doing things, you have to be on the good side or the bad side of the register. Well, that's creating all kinds of problems because two things doesn't give you enough contrast to see their boundary. That's why you need the neutrality. You need the third thing. Now, that's not an objective material reality. We all know I hate that. I have videos on that too. It's a state of creation that has nothing to do with us, that is independent of us in some sense, right? And yet we are connected to it. But we, as humans, get to choose how we are connected to it, the quality of those connections, the intimacy, if you will. And you just can't do two things. You have to have that neutral ground. You have to have that neutrality. You have to have a way to experience the neutrality. This is what true Eastern Buddhism talks about. It doesn't talk about becoming the neutral thing. It's about recognizing the neutral thing, recognizing yourself, and recognizing the sides of the river. Right? And your job is to float down the middle. So it's you, the river, and the two banks. 4 things. Right? And the 4 things spring from the realization of the 3rd thing. That's how that works. It's not that hard. Everybody gets confused. Western Buddhism is garbage. And this is part of the reason why. Because everyone's confused about something simple. Screwed up my glasses. Now they're annoying. There we go. Now less annoying. But the reason why people get stuck, right? And they reject neutrality, right? They simplify the world, they squish it down, A and B, good and bad, whatever, good and evil, right? Is not merely postmodern, right? It's because if boundaries are arbitrary, then why shouldn't you be the one determining them? It's an appeal to your ego, nothing more, right? You've been psyoped. Like if anything the postmoderns say is correct, you're screwed. And their purpose was just to get rid of boundaries so they could redraw them where they wanted them. They were deeply immoral, evil people. That's all. It's not hard. Maybe don't listen to them then, because they're deeply immoral people who wanted to redraw boundaries and change the law so that they could do deeply bad things. This isn't that hard. I know Jonathan Peugeot had this clip, and he was trying to say the postmoderns had a point. No, they didn't. They really don't have a point. There is no point. They're just bad people doing bad things, and that's it. So we might ask ourselves what leads to this oppositional framework. Well, certainly part of it is the promise, right? The lie that postmodernism gives us, right? The author's interpretation, your interpretation, any other interpretation, all conflict. So it starts with setting things against. So who's the author to talk about what he meant by his own work? Why is it his voice that speaks for the work and not mine? I can read. Can you write? Probably can't. Did you live at that time under those conditions growing up how the author did? Nah, you definitely didn't do that. Does that mean there's nothing valuable in his work? No. Does that mean there's nothing in his work to relate to you? Only if you make it so by adopting a postmodern attitude that somehow your ridiculous, ill-informed, retarded interpretation is more correct than anyone else's, especially the author's. That might be a problem. So you've already set yourself against the author, who is the authority on his work, by definition, because it's his creation. And that's the problem. Your interpretation will be opposed to everyone else's interpretation in some way, if for no other reason than you came up with it. And even if theirs matches yours word for word, who came up with it first? Whose should we take? Should we accept your telling of it, or someone has to tell everybody about the interpretation? Like, it's not the author did all the hard work, but now all the easy parasitic work has to be done, and someone has to take credit for that. Right? This is all postmodernism is stealing work from other people. It's inherently parasitic, inherently. Right? It starts from parasitism. So postmodernism creates opposition by removing authority. That's all. It removes the author authority, author of the piece. Whether it's an art piece or a written piece or what, it doesn't matter. Welcome to the PSYOP. And this is why there cannot ever be any good in postmodernism, and there's no point in trying to redeem it. None. No need. They don't have a point. They have an evil observation, which eliminates authority, author, producer, creator, as such. It takes that away from the productive person who already did the productive work that you are benefiting from, and says, you know what, you're equal to them, or maybe even better. They leave that door open. And the problem is, maybe that's not untrue in all cases, but it's almost certainly untrue for you. That's the problem. Lots of things happen. There's outliers, this Pareto principle, right? It's all there, the Cauchy curve, it's all there, right? And so the fact that there are exceptions doesn't mean the rule is wrong. It actually means the rule is right. It's when the exceptions become the rule that we have a problem, right? But then they become the rule. You never get out of the rule. And that's the issue. And again, all of this causes the intimacy crisis. Opposition is the worst. I mean, it's not the only cause of the intimacy crisis, but like opposition is the worst of the intimacy crisis. You cannot make quality relationships, quality connections, if you are busy setting yourself apart or setting other things apart. When you are setting things apart, you're claiming an objective material reality. You're claiming a neutral stance outside of the world of connectedness. And you're saying there's a way in which these things have no connection, and that any attempt to connect them is a fight, a conflict, an opposition. Although you're spending a lot of time like determining things in the world rather than just participating in it. The whole trick of participatory knowledge is you're doing things instead of talking about them. Oh, I have to tell people this, but apparently that isn't abundantly clear by the framework. And to be fair, John Vervaeke doesn't do a good job of making that clear, and he still doesn't have his meditation series up there as far as I remember. I haven't checked too recently, but that was participatory. I don't know. Bad signaling. If you're busy being impolite, busy ignoring people, setting these things apart as if you have the authority and ability to do so, taking command of the frame, right? Rather than cooperating with what you're given. You go to work at a company, you got the coworkers that were there before you, and you get the coworkers that come in after you. You just cooperate with them as best you can, right? Or maybe you're living in a video game, right? Which is opposed to reality for real. And that's the problem. You can live in opposition now. You can live in a video game. People do it all the time. It's terrible for you. You lose reality. Totally. All of these things destroy intimacy. They destroy the relationship itself, connectedness as such, or the quality of the relationship. They just wipe it out. That's what to set apart does. Solution, don't set things apart. Not that hard. Live in communion, right? Live together. Understand that relationship is the important part and the things are the unimportant parts because they're swappable. And the bottom line is, in case I haven't made it abundantly clear, you cannot live in reality if you're busy putting things in opposition. That thing that you are opposing, or those things that you're putting in opposition, rather than cooperating, that's what's most real. What's most real is the conflict, the struggle, the participation in trying to cooperate. That's what's most real. And no, you can't combine opposition and relationship and try to redeem it. Just stop. You can't redeem things. That's not, humans don't redeem. They can't. It's not possible. Submit to reality and find a way to change yourself rather than expecting the world to change around you. The big problem, the number one problem that you see, is an inability for people to submit to reality and instead prefer the world around them to change. And usually somebody else has to do that change. And they may claim otherwise, they may do a quote protest or whatever. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're expecting politics to fix the problem, or economics to fix the problem, or anything but their lazy ass to fix the problem. They're in opposition. They'll say this. I'm opposed to this. You're identifying against. That's a form of opposition. You're not identifying for. You lose pro-felicity, which is not merely branding. No, according to Hans Georg Müller, but branding's not bad. So you lose the ability, right, to be known. You set yourself apart from a thing by protesting it, rebelling against it, but in a way that you can't be identified properly. And therefore, you can't have quality relationships with other things or other people. It's all rebellion. It's all opposition. It's all the same. Protest, all the same. Right? It's worth noting the March for Life is an identification for something, not against something. And therefore, it is not a protest. At least not in the recent sense of the world. Randu, I reject your reality and substitute my own. Yeah. That's always been a difficult quote, we'll say. As much as I like Adam Savage, that particular quote is not great. But it is the rebel spirit, right? Oh, we're rebel scientists doing rebel science, which is, what Mythbusters was. I love that show, by the way. And yeah, they made some grave mistakes sometimes, but most of it was really, really good. So most of it did a good job. Amateur science at its best. But when you enter a game like opposition or rebellion or protest, that you need not enter and cannot win, right? Maybe it's not a game and therefore it's not winnable. You get stuck in an oppositional frame. So if the game is climate, can't win the climate game, you get stuck opposing people who don't agree with you because you can't do anything else. In order to do something in the world, you need a telos. You need a purpose. You need an aim, a positive aim that you can identify with, that you bind yourself to in a certain quality of a relationship or intimacy, right? And then people can know you by that thing. If you're not doing that, you're in a game that isn't a game because you can't win it. And maybe you're just bad frame, right? But you'll get stuck opposing. And the problem is you think I'm opposing the game, but you're still playing. Rather than understanding, you don't need to play that game. You can opt out. I have a video on games and opting out of games. You didn't have to play the wear a mask game. You didn't have to. You didn't have to play get an untested flu shot game. You didn't have to. I didn't. Not necessary. Right? That doesn't mean you have to run around and not wear a mask. Right? But also you didn't have to play that game. You might not like the cost. Okay? Now you're a whiny baby. Different problem. Oh, I don't like the cost. Too freaking bad. I don't like broccoli. Big freaking deal. No one cares. But you didn't have to play the game. And don't fall for normalization or democratization, because they're actually the same thing, right? But if you do, fall for this normalization where everyone's doing it nonsense. That's why everybody wants to be a freak, apart and different, right? That's going to lead to opposition. They want to set themselves apart. I don't want to be a suburban housewife. I want to go out and be a swinger. That happens all the time, right? You've fallen for the normalization thing. You've been told you're normal, and normal is boring, and all the implications, the automatic implications with all this stuff. It's not true. It doesn't need to be true. You don't need to do that. It's not necessary. You can gain intimacy and maintain intimacy without those things. And if you're all trying to be apart, trying to be separate, trying to be a freak, right, trying to avoid being normal, you're going to spread out more. And that's going to flatten the world. You're going to spread out along the horizontal plane and make the horizontal bigger, right? But only in this direction. Not good, right? And then people can't know you as well because you're further apart. There's less intimacy. There's less connectedness. There's less relationship. There's less there. There's less of you, because part of you are the people around you. Fewer people around you this way than there are this way. It's not that hard. Utilize all three dimensions. But they're not normal, right? They're just rebelling. They're just opposing. They're trying to win the game by rebelling because they're in a game they can't win. But rebelling won't win you the game. The game is bogus. It's not a game, and you can't win. You need to opt out, which you can do. You can get severe with it and say, I'm going to go live in a monastery, or more severe, I'm going to live in the woods in a cave by myself. And some people do that, right? Vanishingly few, by the way. Probably you're not the type of person that can do either of those things, right? But someone is, just probably not you. And if it is you, go do it. What's the big deal? I don't get. If you think it's you, go do it. You won't like the costs, and you won't take the trade-off. But go, give it a shot. Stop whining. You don't have to whine about the world. You can opt out. But the thing is, pointing at opposition is also bad, right? And you'll see this pattern over and over again, right? Pointing at heretics, pointing at outliers, pointing at people who don't follow the rules, who get ahead by breaking rules, and therefore the rules aren't real or whatever. No, the rules are real. The fact that they have exceptions makes them more real, not less, by the way. But when you point at these things over and over again, you decohere the world. You say what's more important is rebellion. What's more important is setting things apart. Okay, how are we all supposed to get along? Well, we can't, because you have to pick one. And one of them isn't one thing, and the other is one thing. You talk about Neoplatonism, which is all garbage. There's no such thing. The one and the many. Well, yeah, on one side, you have the many. But the many is consistent of many ones. On the other side, you have a unity, which is also consistent of many ones, but they're cooperating. That's the only difference. You want unity, you need cooperation. You have opponent processing, you will never have cooperation by definition. Also, it's all bad framing, the whole thing. Cooperative processing is the thing. Why can't we get along? Because we won't cooperate. We keep putting ourselves in opponent processing with one another and with ourselves. How can you get along with others if you don't even know how to get along with yourself? I was thinking about this on the drive home today, at the second half of the drive. Internal family systems is the worst freaking thing in the whole world. Like, wow. Like, psychology is bad, but IFS That's just going to destroy people. On average, a few people, well, I benefited from this. Yeah, like Steve Jobs benefited from going to India or wherever he went and learning whatever meditation. It didn't work. Okay, he felt better, but the rest of us suffered. Same with Sam Harris and all these other people who are doing this personal private meditation garbage. It's garbage. Makes you egoic. Realizing that you can cast yourself as a creature with lots of little demons saying different things to you inside, and then pretending like they're your internal family. Probably not a good idea. The next thing you know, you'll be writing letters to dead gods like Hermes. Not recommended. And often this pointing at opposition is wrapped up in wanting to believe that you can survive while denying reality. And a lot of these things were not successful and shouldn't be seen as successful. Was Martin Luther successful? No, not by any measure. Lots of death. Anybody who causes a lot of death, not successful. Sorry. Did he do a thing? Yeah, but it's been disastrous. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe succeed first and then destroy the world. Proper order. A lot of heretics are just heretics. They just had some very, very good ideas and then they went off the rails. Everything else is bad. And you want to resurrect those people? Why? I don't. Let the bad ideas die. It occurred to me, I think this was today or yesterday, one of the days. A lot of people talk about we can't go back. Can't go back. Can't go back. What are you saying when you say we can't go back? First of all, it's an oppositional frame. We can't go back. What? Like, we've progressed this far, we can't go. When in history did that ever happen? Never. 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 It took us 2,000 years to rediscover underwater setting concrete. 2,000. Yeah, we went back quite a bit, I would say. Some of the engineering, the engineering of ancient Egypt, maybe we're starting to get an idea, but that's not even clear. We don't even know if we know how the ancient Egyptians did what they. What do you mean we can't go back? I'd love to be building pyramids with just people. That would be awesome. Make pyramids great again. What are you saying when you say we can't go back? What you're saying is we've made no mistakes worth reversing or trying to correct up until this point. That's what you're saying. Or you're saying all the mistakes we made up until this point, we have corrected. And we are now living in the most perfect world that we can, and therefore any change would be bad. Unless it's progress, which is completely undefined. See my video on progress. Garbage frame. Another complete trash misuse of the language. Completely destructive of language. Progress. Give me a break. And opposers often try to be redeemers. They try to be the force that resurrects. Because reverse psychology, bro. That's all. Reverse psychology and projection explain everything. Almost everything. In psychology. It's really remarkable that people don't understand this. I'm opposed to this. I'm going to resurrect this guy who was opposed to things. We're going to live in a world of rebels. And we'll all be rebels together, except rebels aren't together by definition. They just fight amongst each other, but only when they run out of larger things than them to fight. But that happens, and then everybody's battling. And that's happened historically. It's happened in small groups. I've seen it. I've been part of those groups. It happens in large groups. It happens in whole countries. Right? You can build a country of pirates. It's been done. It doesn't last long. Doesn't last a generation. You can rebel, but that's all you can do. And until you stop rebelling, you can't have nice things. And the rest of us can't have nice things. Thanks. That's on you. Stop opposing. Stop rebelling. And let's get down to brass tacks. The imperfection of the world does not mean that you should oppose it or any part of it. First off, you don't know what's imperfect about it. You have no idea. You might think you do, and you might be right by accident, but you don't know that. Also, even if you correctly see the issue, it might be a problem with a solution. It could have no solution whatsoever. Right? Problem? No solution. It's not really a problem at that point, it's just a pattern, right? It's just a pattern. So you see something in the world like grief. This is John Vervaeke's example. Grief isn't a problem. You're not going to solve it. You're not going to wave a magic wand and make grief go away. You have to go through it. You have to conflict with the change in the world, the alteration of reality itself. The objects in the world have stopped functioning the way they did before. Right, that body that used to be animated and talk to you is now empty and will not animate and talk to you. That's hard. That sucks. But it's not a problem. I can't solve it. I can't bring my mother back to life. I also wouldn't want to. Different problem. I can't do that. So it's not a problem. It doesn't have a solution. But another issue is often the best answer to a problem is not a perfect one. It's a compromise. And a compromise is a form of cooperation. Just saying. Don't know why I'd have to say that, but I know I do. I'm just going to cry about it later. There are lots of best answers that aren't perfect, but are the best available answer because they hurt the fewest number of people. I know I've talked about this before, but if you want to see this in action in business, read Steven Silberger's The 10-Day MBA. Some of that is costs and trade-offs of different parts of the business and how those decisions affect those parts of the business. Right? We live in a world of costs and trade-off. We live in a reality that conflicts with us. It's not opposed to us. We must cooperate with it because it's bigger than we are. And we are here now. However we got here, whether or not we had a choice about that, I don't think you can know that for sure. Obviously, sorry, Sam Harris, but you're an idiot. Too bad. Pondering imponderables is a waste of time, energy, and attention. The three most valuable things that you have, also, that is power, if you focus it. Focus your time, energy, attention. That's power. Don't waste it. Pondering imponderables. And it's worth noting, because I don't think people understand this. Opposition can never create, build, or improve. It can only destroy things. You set things apart, you start a clock. If you don't reintegrate them, if you don't remake the relationships and make those relationships of the correct qualities, the thing will vanish. It will cease. That's true of a marriage. It's true of a family. It's true of a corporation. Maybe you can swap CEOs, but if you don't integrate the new CEO, the company will go out of business. If you can swap the whole board, the company will be fine. If you can swap all the employees, the company will be fine. Maybe, maybe not. But the key is you have to revivify that. You have to remake those connections. You have to re-inject the quality. Separate steps, by the way. Nobody likes it. It's too hard. I get it. It's complicated. It's not simple. Everybody wants a simple answer like postmoderns give you. Unfortunately, their answer is evil and incorrect, all at the same time. Opposers, rebels, always have to appeal to emergence is good because they have no choice. They can't create, they can't build, and they can't improve. So they have to tear it all down and hope that whatever emerges is good. And they have to believe that. Otherwise, them putting in the energy to tear things down was evil. Hint, it was. Don't do that. You're not qualified. Sorry. Could have put your time, energy, and attention into making it better, even though it would suck for you and maybe everybody around you. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be better in the long run. And some of what causes this rebellious attitude, this opposition, is that people can't live up to their own standards of perfection. And the things around them aren't living up to their standards of perfection. And so they rebel. They set themselves apart. Right? But the implication is that they have a standard of perfection that they think is superior to the world. And that's what they want. And they won't compromise or cooperate and settle for anything else. Some of it is that they cannot do what they see as necessary. In other words, they don't have the power or ability, right, or authority to enact the change they see as necessary. Too bad. Join the club. That's almost everybody that's ever lived. You'll be fine. And a lot of it's uncertainty. People don't like uncertainty. If the world worked the way I wanted it to work, I'd be 100% certain. Yes, but now you're 3 years old and you sound stupid. That's a tautology. Good. Now go to bed without dinner. I don't even know what else to say. All opposition leads to rebellion. Doesn't happen right away, maybe, but it does. Also, you're destroying the world. And you're not living in an opposed world. Like you can't. Therefore, you're not. And therefore, the reason why you're struggling is because you're denying the miracle in front of you. You're denying intimacy. And just to make this abundantly clear, because this might not be clear, but I would think that it would be. When you set yourself apart or become opposed, you are also an adversary. If you set two things apart that aren't you, one of them becomes an adversary. But again, you did that. You set against. That's what to oppose means. You are setting against. To set against. Who's setting against? You are. The world was not set against you. It was made for you. You were born into it. Now you must cooperate with it. It forms you and you form it. Sorry, reciprocal relationship. Oh no, I can't resolve that. They're not equals. The world was here first. You're not equal to the world. You're never going to be equal to the world. You're not equal to anyone or anything. You're unique. You're also a person with unique connections to the world and to other persons. Again, oppose, to set against. Opposer, accuser, adversary, rebel. You notice anything? Does that ring a bell? Maybe a book, old book, read about the accuser, the adversary. the rebel. That might be something to think about. What role are you playing in the world? Are you identifying for, with, in, or are you identifying against? And why? Why are you identifying against? No one can help you if you do that. That's not to say that you won't be helped. It's to say no one can help you. And on that note, I will catch up on any comments. John was waiting for the eye patch thingy. You mean my monocle? Ugh, the imprecision. It's terrible. Already mentioned Tom's little comments here. Oh, he did like Adam and Father Eric. Yeah, that was a great video. The feminism video was good. I really enjoyed that video. I thought it was great. I already mentioned that. What else are we getting? Ship clerk. Algebra's equality is beautifully balanced. Yeah, but there's no reason to do the equation because they're equivalent. And therefore, you can't tell them apart mathematically because the result is the same. Womp, womp, womp. No, Dawn, Felicity is not just branding. Hans George Miula talks about this. I mean, this is basically based on Andy Warhol, 15 Minutes of Fame. It's all the same thread. It's like, oh, everybody will have a brand and everybody will be. No, they won't. No, they won't. Not everybody's going to be Kanye West. Sorry. He did wonderful things. I'm not bashing on Kanye. I'm saying, like, you're not Kanye West. But Kanye West is. What does that say about branding? Are a racket and a ball opposites, right? Or flowers in a vase, exactly. Or men and women, which was Gage's thesis. So men and women are opposites. No, they're not. Prove it. Tell me how they're opposites. I'll wait here while you fumble around not being able to do it. Matthew, it's good to see you, sir. Gradient. Look, gradients don't work in 2D space. Everybody misses this. But also, the gradient is a function of detail. In other words, it's completely an affectation or side effect of focus. Oops. Everybody misses. That's why newspapers can be read. There's lots of little dots on the pictures, and yeah, it's not that hard. Ship clerk. Captain Mark, skillfully navigating those opposing patterns. They're not opposing. Patterns overlap and complement, cooperate. All right, Benjamin, we'll give you a shot today. I have a prediction. I think I'm going to cry already. In the future, conservatives will be the one who will want to issue biotech to allow immortality. No, conservatives have no interest in evil. This is because the sun offered. I don't know why you make up this weird frame. I have no idea. I can't even keep up. Meanwhile, the liberals, there are no liberals. The liberalism as a label doesn't make any sense. Just opposers who identify against. Tom, who I know left already. Some things are better than others. Today's whiteboard drawing is better than previous ones. That's true. Well, yes, I'm not drawing on the whiteboard anymore. Thank goodness. I have somebody who's way better at drawing than I am. That's how we solve that, and we cooperate to make good drawings. Shipler, critically conflicted with my self-centeredness. I hope that's a funny joke. I think it's a funny joke. Tom, postmodernism removes the author of the piece. Yes, or piece, both. Both indeed. Yeah. I went over Randy's comment. I reject your reality and such a. He stole that from somewhere too, and I can't remember. He told the story at one point. I don't remember where it's from. Tom Morell. It's possible to focus on what you have in common with somebody, yes, which might be almost nothing, true, and get on, right? And just ignore the differences, right? until a substantive conflict of interest occurs. And that's the right thing to do, because that allows us to cooperate together. And you can't cooperate together any other way. It's super important, actually. It's really weird. This oppositional frame, this rebellion is weird to me. I'm just like, and then they go, whoa, we can't have nice things because of this, that, the other. Look in the mirror. That's why you can't have nice things. It's literally the only reason. Like, just stop. Just stop. The ship clerk, yeah, I did cotton onto this. I caught another corner of my eye. Being atypical is so typical nowadays. Yeah, trying to be anyway. It's very fashionable to be that way. And again, yeah, so you don't have to, right? There's lots of things you don't have to do. Good night, Tom. Sorry I didn't say good night to you while I was in the middle of my rant, but we are sailing into deep waters. Oh yeah, I went all the way over the Marianas Trench and threw you all in. Hope you can swim. Monocle, that was the word you were looking for? All right, Don, well, you have the word. Sally Joe, all opposition leads to bed without dinner. Yes, that is correct. At least if you're 3 years old. It's a bad movie. Dungeon Master. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes, Dungeon Master. Dungeon Master, terrible movie. It's a great game, though. That's something, don't you think? I think the game Dungeon Master is fantastic. Man, I am just having to reset after vacation. I didn't do anything right. That's how these things work, I guess. I forgot to fill and show off my Muppet Cup, which you can buy if you are so inclined on my shop.markofwisdom.org store. It's good to consider you're a Muppet, and then maybe you won't try to set things apart for no reason. You want to hop in? There's the link to hop in. Doesn't look like all the send receive stuff is working in StreamYard today, and I don't know why, but I also don't care. Navigating patterns. Hop on in to the discussion if you wish to discuss opponent processing, or opponents, or opposition, or opposing versus identifying with. Cooperation, commonality. Opposition is opposed to commonality. In case that wasn't clear. Why can't we all get along? Because you're opposing, you're rebelling. Stop it. But I don't like how things have been done for thousands of years. Okay, also stop it. The way we got to where we are was by doing those things for thousands of years. I don't know what else to tell you. That's how you're here. That's why you're here. That's why you have the things you have, because we did things a certain way. And yeah, it wasn't perfect, but you don't know what of it was perfect and what of it was not perfect and why. We had a lovely discussion earlier on the Discord server, which is partly why my notes weren't in order, although not a good enough part. No good excuse for my sloppiness. I was pointing out the pattern of, if you don't have an ideal archetypal father, archetypal mother, right? Archetypal, right? And then you lose or have a defective or bad mother or father, you get nothing to fall back on. You get nothing to fall back on. Right. And you might note that with Protestant denominations, they sort of reject the mother archetype entirely and ignore it completely. They'll say no, but yes, clearly it's evident. And then they want to feminize everything. Of course they do. If you know you need the feminine archetype in your worldview, and you don't have it symbolically, you're gonna make women pastors. What else would you do? Of course. Also, that's bad. We know why. Don't do that. Also, I can't force you to do the right thing. That happens. But yeah, I mean, there's a pattern, not a problem. Pattern. There's no sort of solution to that. And it is this sort of deep opposition that we kind of carry because things aren't perfect, or at least they're not the way I want them to be. And if I just fight against them, maybe I can get them the way I want them, because, you know, can cast history as the as right because the winners always got to write it. That's what happened, but it's the winners write history. I don't. Did you open one history book once ever? That's not true. It's a nice statement. It's cool. It's a flat way of looking at the world. Of course, the victors wrote history. I don't know. Did you ever see a Civil War statue down south? They didn't win. Why is there history all over the place? Oops. Guess your thesis is wrong, huh? Try again, dude. Yeah, I was they don't even engage those people. Like, literally the dumbest thing you can say. History isn't even remotely written by the winners. That isn't. None of that ever happened. Not that the winners didn't contribute, and maybe contribute heavily, more so than the others, but they didn't write it. That's for sure. Look, I mean, people still pay attention to the postmoderns, and what a bunch of losers, actual losers, and immoral bad people. And Immanuel Kant, not great. Nietzsche, not great. Heidegger, obviously not great. Why are we? If they weren't winners, why are we dealing with their historical works? I don't understand. History not written by the winners. That's dumb. People are dumb. I can't even. No one wants to jump in and say hi and oppose me. Fight me, bro. No debates, no arguments, no like, you're wrong because Karl Marx or whatever. Man, that video I did on socialism is evil, that got some interesting comments. Mostly proving my point, which is like, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, really, bro? So you're not going to address anything I said in the video? You're going to just make blind appeals to, but that's not what Karl meant, and not make an argument? Really? Just like I said in the video, you wouldn't? That's your strategy for proving me wrong. Excellent. Keep it up. Keep it up, dude. I love it. Oh, Aranda, that was a good video? Okay, good. Well, I comment on it, or comment in here. Let me know what you liked about it, what you didn't. Right? I'm trying to do more of that. I literally decades I've been trying to figure out how to explain that to people. So hopefully it was a good video, means I got the explanation across, and now you can see the trick and you won't be psyoped by similar. That's not the only right way you use postmodern egoic framing to fool people. You can tell them they're individuals. That's the same trick. It's a terrible trick. Yeah, and if you're an individual, you're opposed to everything. And intimacy crisis confirmed, which causes the meaning crisis, and yeah. And the intimacy crisis part 2 talk that I did with Catherine was pretty awesome. Lynn Lavoie, welcome, Lynn. It's good to see you. In a secular society, blind people need a social net. Yeah, they do. That's true. Everybody does, blind or not. Every single person needs. Right. But they don't need an ism of any kind. And you can do away with isms. And the world works better when you do, because isms inherently trick you into thinking there's a state of no authority and no leadership, which they can't prove exists, because there are no examples of that. There's no examples, but there's no hierarchy. Those examples don't exist because we're not equal. And because we're not equal, we need a way to resolve that. And the way to resolve that is hierarchy. That's what hierarchy is by definition. It's the way to resolve the fact that we're not all equal. That's it. It's that simple. I know everybody, blah, 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 blah. It's like, shut up. It takes 2 seconds. Just go with easy framing. It'll be more understandable for you. Yeah, everybody needs other people, right? You need a certain quality of relationship based on your failings and their strengths. And those two have to be close enough Otherwise, you're in big trouble. Like, if you need certain things and I can't provide them, then maybe it's time to part ways. Vice versa too, right? Like, you know, that's where you get into trouble with psychological framing. It's like, oh, you're codependent. Oh my God. Like, really? Shut up. Everybody's dependent upon other people and other things. Not exciting. In a secular society, blind people die. That's true around here. They do. Yeah, they throw them off cliffs. Basically what they do. And that's the issue. Benjamin Franklin, each society has a different telos. That's what makes it a society. To bind things together, you need a final cause or telos. Why do you get everything backwards? I swear you do it on purpose. You're very good at it. If that were like an Olympic sport, the gold would go to you. And hopefully I exemplified in that monologue the flipping that happens, right? You try to do away with something, but it's in the world, right? It's part of reality. And so in your opposition, you create it. And then you haven't done away with it, and you're in opposition. And you've made everything worse. That's why opposition rebelling can only destroy, but it can't create. It can't make things better. It can't revivify. It can't find commonality. Right? It can't do any of those things. Right? Because you're setting apart. You set things apart. They're not unified. Like, oh, we need unity. Empathy will give us unity because we'll all be connected together. Equality will give us unity because we'll all be one thing. That's not unity. Right? That's one thing. Those are different. And yeah, when you misunderstand the quote Neoplatonic, which doesn't exist, point of one and many, no. It's the many, the one, and the unity. There's three things. Right? So the many consists of multiple ones, right? And what they strive for is unity. You can't get unity by equalizing or going across. You need to get unity by coming together, right? And people talk about vertical causality. Yes. Vertical causality is the acknowledgement that equality doctrine is dumb and doesn't work. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know why this isn't obvious, but apparently it isn't. And that's you know, Vervaeke tries to resolve it as relevance realization, which, whatever, it's black box. I use it too, it's great, but also doesn't resolve anything at all. Right? And so you have a situation where it's like, okay, how do we know what a thing is? Relevance realization. Yay, problem solved. You didn't explain relevance realization. You just used two words and slam them together, and they're not wrong, but also not helpful. Pragmatist comes in and goes, yeah, it's great, true, unhelpful, who cares? Moving right along. You know, good to have that framing to talk about things. Doesn't fix a problem. The fact that relevance realization exists, it can be interesting in certain frames, but it doesn't help you because you can't define it. And even if you could define it, the odds that you can change it or move it or do whatever you need to do with it are vanishingly small. I think part of the problem is relevance realization is wrapped up in distributed cognition, right? And so all the things that fix the problems of the individual, right, the self-transcendence and all that nonsense that can't possibly exist by definition, are all wrapped up in other people and other things outside of you. They're all distributed something, right? In other words, they are qualities of relationships that you have with the outside world, or intimacy. That's why it's an intimacy crisis. I hope I'm explaining that well. At some point, I thought it was going to happen while I was on vacation. It did not. At some point, I'm going to sit down and write articles. My Substack's all set up and ready to go, has been for months. And I did get a bunch of reading done. Thank you, Jesse. Lovely James Bond book. So maybe that's a good sign that I can sit and write. But that's not a guarantee because writing is a lot harder than reading. But hey, it's a step in the right direction. I did have 2 days on vacation where I only slept 4 hours. I woke up and I felt great. Did not take as much advantage of that as I should have, perhaps, but I was on vacation, so you know. It'll be interesting. The video with Jess will be interesting because I didn't even have my camera or my mic. I used the laptop by itself. Well, it's a high-end laptop with good stuff, but yeah, I haven't looked at that video yet. It's with the editor, so we'll see. Also use the StreamYard local record feature. I know nothing about. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be cool. Maybe it'll suck. I don't know. Maybe my editor will say, I am not editing these two files together. I'll use the unified file. I don't know. Fair if he does that. It'd be a lot of work to unify those two files together. Weirdly, one's much bigger than the other. I don't understand that, but that's okay. I don't have to. Yeah. No one's opposed to my opponent definition, or I mean, this is why I don't like opponent processing. It's cooperative processing. Let's all cooperate. I said this to Paul Vanderklee a long time ago. I think it was my first talk with him. I said, you know, if you people all just like focused on what you had in common, maybe you could get together and make positive things in the world. But if the so-called Christians are busy fighting on theology all day, that's why we can't have nice things. It's nobody else's fault but yours. That's it. Sorry. You know, find people to cooperate with and go do that in your, local to you. Or come online and cooperate on markofwisdom.org and the Mark of Wisdom Discord server and help us with our documents so that we can build wisdom communities for people, because that's important. We've got to teach people how to community again, since we've destroyed the entire universe. Arandu, look, you can't have distributed cognition without cooperative processing. It's one of those things John Vervaeke misses. It's kind of obvious, and I always feel bad because I'm like, really, bro? Really? And I feel bad because John was never receptive to our work, which is too bad. He could learn a lot in a 3-4 hour conversation with Manuel and I in particular, but whatever. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it. I mean, all this work comes out of his stuff directly. It's out of his meditation live stream. All of it. Oh well. Consider 2, distributed cognition through time. Implications. If distributed cognition is real and it happens through time or over time, which I think, whatever, that means the Bible is the smartest book in the world. Just saying. And why the Christians don't like shove that where the sun don't shine on every sciencey person that they meet is beyond me, but boy, I sure as hell would. But I care more about the truth than sparing them their feelings and their idiocy. Sometimes they're just idiots. Yeah, distributed cognition is good, but you need to be able to cooperate to have it. Unless you're a parasite upon it. And then that's really the problem of the world today, is we get a lot of parasites on the past, on the present, right? And people aren't cooperating, so they're not building new things because you can't. You're in rebellion, opposition, right? Parasites are set aside. Instead of becoming part of the body, they're leeching off the body, right? And that's the problem. Where is the water? What water? You mean my Sampel? That's what I'm drinking in my Muppet cup. This is all Sampel. Or do you mean the water in my pond, which is intact? Oh, I gotta clean the pond. Oh, the pond is a mess. Oh, the pond does not oppose me, and yet I am opposed to the lilies in the pond. Not really. I love them. But you have to get rid of a few of them. I also have to cut a tree down that's in my driveway. But now that I have the saw working, I can do that. Arandu, you're the ship clerk. You should know. Hopefully outside the boat. All the water should be outside the boat. That is true. This is why people who are true pirates never build anything. And so funny. So I'm reading this James Bond book, and it's partly set in Tarpon Springs, in Florida, where the Symbolic World Summit was. And I was like, wait, what? This is cool. And it's about piracy. And it was like, hey, this is about pirates. Cool. 2 more ancient piracy on the high Caribbean and more modern piracy. And also the idea that the United States has become like a den of pirates. Certainly not in the way that Ian Fleming wrote about. I have to give it more thought. I hate it when Jesse comes up with stuff because it takes me a long time to figure out if he's right, and if not, how he's not right. The Europeans have a strange view of America, and they misunderstand a lot of things. So, and I think part of the American problem, this is a sort of fresh thinking, is it could be that there is an engagement with hierarchy at the mid layer that is fundamentally different from hierarchy at the top layer, right? Where there's fewer, one leader, a couple of authorities, right? Maybe a few experts, whatever. And when you flatten things too much, you can't maintain that mid-level or mid-tier hierarchy. Because we see a lot of the mid-tier hierarchies just blowing up and going away. And I don't know why that is. I have to think a lot more about that. But it was a recent thought. And look, if you guys have thoughts for live streams or videos, let me know in the comments or in the live stream chat here or whatever. I always try to do videos when they're requested. I know I'm a few requests behind, but hopefully this next couple of weeks here, I'll get back on the horse and get some more videos out. I should have one out for Monday. I've got one sitting there that I need to release that hopefully is really good. Come on, dude. Like, really, Orlando? The Matrix video. I know. We don't even know how to do the Matrix video. And I keep thinking more about it, and it's just so endless. It's like, all right, so we could do a 16-hour Matrix video series consisting of 8 episodes, like, but then it's like, now we got to distill this down. So, and I heard some interesting things on, what is it? Cinema Psyop, I think was the podcast. Those guys are crazy. Yeah, I was listening to some interesting. Oh, they were also trashing Sam Harris in an excellent way. It was glorious. But they were talking about the Matrix, and a typical mistake, right? Lana and Lily Wachowski were fine until they weren't. It's like, no, they were never fine. If you don't understand this, watch Bound, which is the movie they made before The Matrix. Hopefully you'll see it. Hopefully you'll see that they were never okay, ever, at any point. What they turned into was inevitable. Yeah, it just, everybody's, they try to redeem them. Oh, they were okay. No, they weren't. They were corrupted before. And also not settling for ordinary, for mediocre, causes you to branch out more and more and more, and you spread yourself thin, and then you get into a corner you can't get yourself out of, and the next thing you know, you're addicted to cocaine, or whatever, right? Addicted to sex, or you're in the BDSM club, or whatever it is. Same pattern in lots of places. So, but yeah, the Matrix. I thought about the Matrix video today too, and I was just like, it's so much work. At what point do we really want to make? There's so many points. The Matrix is such a mess. It's just like, it's a mess. Everything's a mess. Watch Tron Legacy instead. There you go. That's much better. Rejection of Western Buddhism, why it doesn't work. Redemption. It's fantastic. Saving the Father from the Belly of the Whale. Yeah, it's all there. Death, resurrection, it's all there. Great. It's fantastic. All right, look, nobody wants to join me. So I will oppose you all and sign off. I should be home. I know next month I'm going to be out too. Probably only for a week, I think. I haven't made hard plans yet. I gotta go to the family barbecue though up in Maine, so long trip. And I got a conference before that. Another, thing I gotta do, which is fine. That should be fun. But I will see you all next week. I hope my 2 weeks off wasn't too much. And have a lovely week. I will talk to you all later. Comment, like, subscribe, whatever it takes.